It sounds strange that a single journey could stitch together deserts, mountains, languages, and ideas, yet long before airplanes or the internet, paths of dust and stone quietly pulled east and west into the same unfolding story. Imagine news traveling only as fast as footsteps or hooves, while spices, silk, and rumors crossed continents anyway, creating a world that felt enormous and connected at the same time. The surprise is not that people wanted distant goods, but that they trusted narrow routes and human decisions enough to risk everything on roads that could disappear into sandstorms or political arguments. Right away, tension appears between safety and curiosity because every journey promised profit and knowledge while also threatening hunger, robbery, or getting completely lost. As we step onto this long road together, the question is not who walked it first, but why so many kept walking even when turning back would have been easier. The answer begins far from famous empires, in everyday needs that slowly pushed communities to look beyond their own valleys. Once people realized that what they lacked might exist somewhere else, motion became as important as settlement. Long before the road had a name, farmers in Eastern Asia produced silk that shimmered like captured sunlight, while people far to the west prized soft fabrics that showed wealth without shouting. At the same time, horses from the grasslands, precious stones from mountains, and spices from warm coasts waited in places that seemed impossibly distant to one another. No single ruler planned this connection because the journey grew from many small exchanges repeated again and again. Each successful trade encouraged another, slowly stretching invisible threads across geography. Villages near passes and rivers noticed travelers passing through and learned that rest, food, and shelter could be traded just like metal or cloth. Over time, stopping places became towns, and towns learned to depend on strangers. Daily life adjusted as merchants counted loads, repaired shoes, and listened carefully to unfamiliar accents. Geography shaped everything because mountains blocked paths while valleys invited movement, forcing travelers to choose between danger and delay. Deserts demanded planning and patience, since water mattered more than speed, and mistakes could not be corrected easily. Steppelands added another challenge, as nomadic groups controlled wide open spaces with mobility and deep local knowledge. Rather than avoiding these peoples, traders learned negotiation, gifts, and alliances. Trust became a form of currency, fragile yet essential. When trust failed, stories of loss spread quickly, warning others without maps or written guides. As routes lengthened, no one traveled the entire distance at once because survival favored shorter, familiar sections. Goods changed hands many times, passing from group to group like messages whispered across a crowd. This system limited individual risk while strengthening the overall network. A merchant might know little about distant lands yet still benefit from their existence. Information moved with the goods, including weather patterns, political changes, and strange inventions. Over time, knowledge itself became one of the most valuable cargoes. Early states noticed these moving riches and began offering protection, sometimes motivated by security and sometimes by taxes. Guards, checkpoints, and agreements appeared, adding order while also demanding obedience. Power entered the journey because roads that generated wealth attracted attention from rulers. This created another conflict where organization improved safety but also restricted freedom. Some travelers welcomed structure, while others avoided official paths to escape control. The road adapted, splitting and rejoining like a river finding its way around obstacles. Languages met along these paths, forcing creativity through gestures, shared words, and patient repetition. Simple phrases became bridges, allowing deals to form despite misunderstanding. Writing systems spread slowly, helping record prices, debts, and promises. Coins from distant rulers appeared in local markets, telling silent stories of faraway power. Beliefs traveled too, as travelers shared rituals, stories, and explanations for the world. Some ideas blended easily, while others caused suspicion or debate. Food habits changed as ingredients arrived from unfamiliar climates. New tastes surprised people and gradually reshaped daily meals. Clothing styles shifted as materials inspired imitation and adaptation. Even music and storytelling absorbed rhythms and images from afar. Culture did not move all at once, but accumulated like layers of dust on a well-used path. No single traveler noticed the full transformation while it happened. Animals played quiet yet crucial roles, carrying loads, pulling carts, and determining speed. Camels thrived in dry lands, horses ruled open spaces, and yaks handled high altitudes. Caring for these animals demanded skill, knowledge, and respect. Their endurance shaped schedules, stops, and survival. Without them, long-distance travel would have remained an impossible dream. Humans and animals formed partnerships built on necessity rather than choice. Risk followed every mile because weather could shift suddenly and politics could change overnight. A friendly town might become dangerous after a new leader rose to power. Travelers learned to listen carefully before entering unfamiliar territory. Caution became a habit, not a weakness. Stories around evening fires served as warnings and lessons. Experience, more than courage, decided who continued and who disappeared. Over generations, families specialized in travel-related skills, passing knowledge like inheritance. Some became guides, others translators, others protectors. Children grew up hearing about distant lands as real places rather than legends. The world felt larger but also more connected. Curiosity expanded along with confidence. The idea of distance itself began to change. Slowly, these paths formed a recognizable system, even without borders or signs. Travelers learned where help could be found and where silence was safer. The road existed because people believed it did. Faith in the journey sustained it as much as physical paths. Every successful crossing strengthened the network, every failure taught adjustments. As powers rose and fell, the road remained useful, reshaped but not erased. New rulers claimed sections while respecting older customs. Control shifted, yet movement continued. Stability and uncertainty existed side by side. This balance allowed the system to survive centuries of change. By this stage, East and West were no longer distant ideas but participants in shared rhythms. Actions taken in one region echoed subtly in another. People who never traveled far still felt the effects. The journey became part of everyday life without being noticed. Its presence was ordinary and extraordinary at once. What began as simple exchange had quietly reshaped expectations. And as the road stretched onward, its deeper consequences waited just beyond the horizon. As movement increased, the journey began shaping politics as much as trade, because rulers realized that controlling flow mattered just as much as owning land or raising armies. Taxes, permits, and protection fees slowly became part of travel, adding layers of authority that travelers learned to navigate carefully. This balance between freedom and control created constant negotiation, where survival depended on reading power as well as terrain. Cities that sat along major routes grew confident and crowded, filled with warehouses, guest houses, stables, and markets buzzing from dawn until nightfall. People who lived there learned to expect foreigners, strange clothing, and accents that bent familiar words. Daily routines adjusted to rhythms set by arrivals and departures. Opportunity and uncertainty shared the same streets. Craftspeople adapted their skills to traveling customers, producing goods sized for transport and decorated with styles that appealed across cultures. Ideas about beauty shifted as designs blended influences from distant regions. Imitation became innovation without anyone announcing it. Culture moved quietly through hands, eyes, and habits. Knowledge traveled alongside merchants, often unintentionally, hidden inside conversations, observations, and borrowed techniques. Ways of measuring time, treating illness, or organizing labor slipped across borders. Some changes were welcomed immediately, while others waited generations before taking root. Curiosity opened doors that force never could. The journey also carried danger of misunderstanding because unfamiliar customs could cause fear or offense. Gestures meant one thing in one place and something entirely different elsewhere. Successful travelers learned patience and humility, recognizing that listening mattered more than speaking. Mistakes could cost profit, trust, or safety. Religion and philosophy followed the same routes, spreading through debates, shared meals, and quiet reflection. Beliefs sometimes clashed, sometimes blended, and sometimes simply coexisted. Sacred texts traveled wrapped in cloth, while stories traveled in memory. Faith reshaped itself without losing its core. The road encouraged comparison because travelers saw alternatives to their own ways of living. Different systems of rule, family, and education became visible. This awareness did not always cause change, but it planted questions. Questions lingered long after travelers returned home. As demand grew, the journey influenced production far from the road itself. Farmers increased output for distant markets they would never see. Mines expanded, forests were managed, and workshops multiplied. Local economies quietly tied themselves to global demand. Distance became less important than connection. Technology advanced through shared problem solving as challenges in one region inspired solutions elsewhere. Navigation tools improved, maps became more detailed, and construction methods spread. Transportation slowly grew more efficient. Each improvement shortened perceived distance rather than physical space. The world felt smaller without actually shrinking. Not everyone benefited equally because wealth accumulated unevenly along the routes. Some regions prospered while others supplied labor or raw materials. This imbalance sometimes sparked resentment and resistance. Movement created opportunity but also inequality. The road reflected human choices rather than fairness. Moments of collapse interrupted travel when wars, plagues, or political chaos disrupted safety. Segments closed while others remained active, forcing detours and adjustments. The system survived because it was flexible, not because it was strong everywhere. Redundancy became resilience. Generations of travelers left behind traces in language, genetics, and memory. Words borrowed long ago became ordinary speech. Families carried stories of ancestors who had crossed unimaginable distances. The journey shaped identity as much as economy. Young people growing up near the routes heard tales that stretched imagination beyond local borders. Their sense of possibility expanded before they ever traveled. Education quietly incorporated wider knowledge. Awareness preceded action. The road influenced diplomacy because contact reduced mystery between distant powers. Envoys traveled with more confidence, knowing routes and customs already tested by merchants. Negotiations rested on shared understanding built through trade. Conversation replaced isolation. Artists absorbed themes from afar, blending imagery and symbols into new expressions. Music, patterns, and storytelling evolved through exposure. Creativity thrived on exchange rather than isolation. The journey fed imagination. Even foodways reflected movement as recipes adapted imported ingredients into local traditions. Meals told stories of connection without announcing history lessons. Taste became memory. Flavor carried geography on the tongue. As time passed, the road stopped feeling new, even though its impact continued deepening. Connection became expected rather than surprising. People planned lives around movement and exchange. Stability depended on circulation. The journey never belonged to one empire or culture because it existed through participation rather than ownership. When power shifted, paths adjusted. When borders changed, routes bent, continuity emerged from change. Each traveler added a small piece to a vast, shared story that no single person could see completely. The road lived through countless choices made daily. Its strength came from repetition. Habit sustained what ambition began. As we continue forward, the journey's role in shaping explorers, thinkers, and empires grows clearer, revealing paths that would carry not only goods and ideas, but the future itself steadily onward.